So what do I love about it? I love about it that you always got to bet on yourself. And not like yourself as in your own person, but like your team, like your squad. You like, yo, it's on us, y'all. We got to do it. Ain't nobody going to do it for us. And so I kind of ties back to old school, like when I was a high school basketball coach, like how do you get people fired up to get ready to go play Crenshaw? How do you get fired? Well, you got to get their mind right. And for me, mindset is everything. 100% of everything is mindset. Do you have the right mindset to go at this? And for me, what's exciting about this work is I get to talk to cats that are doing philanthropic giving, world-changing nonprofit work, really awesome impact investing stuff that I hadn't even heard about. That can be before 9 a.m.
Welcome to Career Cheat Code. In this podcast, you'll hear how everyday people impact the world through their careers. Learn about their journey, career hacks, and obstacles along the way. Whether you're already having the impact you want or are searching for it, this is the podcast for you.
All right. Welcome to the show. Thank you for taking the time to connect with us today. I don't typically like to spend a lot of time on the intro, so let's just jump right in there. Let's tell the world who you are and what you do for a living.
Happy to be here. Stephen Minix. My role, I'm the senior director of community for an organization called UpMetrics. And what does the senior director of community do at UpMetrics? I create kind of our engaging spaces where we work with foundations and funders, impact investors, and nonprofits. And I create the convening space for us to kind of learn in public and get in the sandbox to where when you think about doing work together, sometimes you got to know each other first. And a lot of nonprofits work with foundations and foundations work with nonprofits, but they don't really know each other. And they just kind of turn it into a relay race. What I try to do is use relationships and information to help kind of that work coalesce and actually be impactful. So I just use some facilitation and our technology, of course, to support that. But that's what I do, create engaging experiences for our community of clients and partners.
That's great. So tell me more about what the technology itself does.
We built UpMetrics, and I'm the first hire here, so I've been around for a minute. It's a impact analytics software where we're helping organizations take in data, whatever data you use to kind of look at what you fund, what you operationally do, et cetera, all the data qualitatively and quantitatively that you use to kind of inform your work and your enterprise. Well, usually it lives in a lot of different systems. What we've done is create an aggregator, a system that pulls it all together. So whether you're looking at communications, marketing, outreach, capital out the door, doesn't matter. Purpose-built the technology so that you can do it in one spot and not have to be a data scientist to understand what it is that you're trying to do. So it's a lot about demystification and making things simple and more possible versus using big enterprise software to kind of then circle square an issue. So funders use it to justify and articulate where they're putting out their capital tied to their initiatives and their programs. What are they trying to learn from that? Nonprofits oftentimes use us to best articulate what it is that they're taking on through their impact framework, building out an impact framework where they understand who do we serve, what do we serve them with, what is the quality of that service, is anybody better off, and how does it pertain to the community that we're trying to support. So when you start to help use technology and consultative services to, I say, make folks more dangerous in what they do. The reality is nonprofits are always trying to justify their existence. And I just think it's a whack way to exist. I always have. I think justifying why you exist is not nearly as fun as leaning into why you decided to do this work or what you try to care about. And sometimes that sausage making of like data reports and annual reports take you away from what it is that you actually care to be doing, your true north of why I built this enterprise or why I service this. So we want to streamline that for folks so they can put their energy where it needed, which is in the work itself, not in the administration of the work.
That makes a lot of sense. So is that typically your ideal clients or foundations and nonprofits? Are those typically the folks that you work with the most?
Yeah, the three legs of our stool are impact investors, foundations, philanthropic organizations, and nonprofits. So those that are putting out capital, the impact investors or the foundations, and those that are taking in that capital to do the work on the ground level, the nonprofits, we see that as kind of a wonderful circle to be a part of because they need help with the data collection, articulating what they're up to, better understanding the enterprise. Well, so does the funder. because the funder's
Mm.
putting out capital at volume and they need to understand what's happening. And we don't do it through a compliance conversation. We do it through more of an inspiration conversation. And when you say things like, I want to create a partnership as a funder with a nonprofit, well, we know there's capital going back and there's capital going one way. Sure. But that capital is part of it. So is that lived experience of that nonprofit and that genius on the ground doing that work. Well, then that information coming up isn't just to report, it's actually to inform. And if funders are trying to learn, well, you need to learn something. And you don't learn from a static report only. You can learn from the relationship, the conversations, a lot of other things that we then try to facilitate in our relationships with our partners.
That makes sense. So as the senior director of community, what happens when you go into work on a Monday? Like, how are you structuring your week? What is it that you're actually responsible for? And all of those things.
Yeah, well, it's really interesting. It's the first day back from a holiday, so my Monday today is a little different. But look, my work is rooted in curiosity, and I need to be curious and be thoughtful about what is happening in the nebulous kind of impact space, what's going on in the world of philanthropy, nonprofit work, what's going on in social work, kind of because that best informs me how I can engage my client, my prospect, my partners, etc. So being mindful and being curious. So for me, most mornings start around 5:30 in the morning. And that's just so I can get some brain food. I voraciously consume articles, blog posts. Like I'm always trying to just learn as much as possible, but not in an extraction way. I'm not trying to take genius from someone. I'm trying to learn what's out there so that I can best be relevant when I'm having these conversations, whether it's about how I can help you, whether it's about who I can introduce you to. Point is, I have to be kind of a jack of all trades in that aspect as it relates to community, because by nature of the word community, it's a bunch of people in a community. It's not just one person or one archetype or one brain, right? So like, if I think I have it all figured out as it pertains to where I'm at right now in San Diego and the philanthropic landscape, well, now I'm jumping on a conversation with a brother from New York. He ain't got time to talk to me too much about what's going on in San Diego, right? Might have some contextual information from
Mm-hmm.
that, but kind of wants to know, do I know what's cracking in New York? Do I know what's, in those things? So you need to be well read and well traveled mentally, but also, look, I use tech to really help make myself dangerous. I do Google alerts on things I want to learn about, people I want to learn about, who's out there writing, who's nice with it in public, who do I like to model some of my behaviors on? I do a lot of that with tech, and that helps me on those early mornings on a Monday get up, understand where I can go get some new inspiration while I then lock into my actual kind of rhythm that I know that I need to have as a director in the company, which is your internal department stuff, planning for 2025, your Q4, projections, all the things that go into most company work. But none of that is possible if I don't first get that curiosity piece satiated in the front end, because that's what keeps me just kind of like geeking during the day, right?
Mm-hmm.
That fuels me. And then a lot of what I do is kind of check to be reality is kind of check on some fishing lines I put out in the water months before. And I mean that not as in a sales way. I mean that in a partnership way. A lot of times I get pulled in to be a part of a convenings or public speaking opportunities, things like that. And so what I do is make sure that where I have those RFPs out, where I have those proposals out, or I have those collaborative partnerships out, Mondays are my check-in days. Hey man, how you feeling? Where's your mind at? You want to talk about like I like to keep people at a rhythm with me, not as a, hey, Steven's here. Like I don't want to play gotcha with nobody. I want you to know that I'm around, I'm available, I'm willing, I'm curious. Mondays are about that. That's usually where I get dangerous with my pen or my typing fingers and dropping notes, and because then that's going to keep things noisy all week for me to then keep me excited about the work I'm doing. So it's a little bit more social on Mondays, a little more tactical on Tuesdays.
That makes a lot of sense. And it's still, I think very much some good cheat codes there. Like Google
Sure.
Alerts is a good one, right?
Yes.
Like I definitely use that, especially, I have a national portfolio as well. So like there are times when if I'm having a conversation with folks in El Paso, it'd be nice to know if they're dealing with some things on the ground that may trigger their minds to be elsewhere, right? Or may just be very important to our conversation. So I like to stay informed as well and just make sure that a lot of that I get as proactively as possible. And as you said, using technology to my advantage.
You know where I learned that the quickest was I started doing work in New Orleans and in Baton Rouge. You try to get some work off the ground Q1 in Baton Rouge. You got Fat Tuesday coming around mid-February. You got Mardi Gras. There's not a lot of business, like per se, like jumping on a call on a Zoom. It's a lot more social
Sure.
there. And so what happened was I started having these partnerships go on and nobody would respond to my emails in like early January, late February. I'm like, what's going on? I thought we were excited. We closed these deals. I wasn't thinking about what they experienced.
Mm,
And it was the easiest thing to do is like, okay, now on my calendar today, relationships have been going on for years. I know exactly when I need to be mindful of what's going on in Louisiana, right?
absolutely.
Now, it's not like that everywhere, but there always is something else somewhere. So how can you be mindful? Because the worst thing you could do when you're trying to create a partnership is be thoughtless. You know what I
Absolutely.
mean? Like, is not understand, like, oh, damn, I didn't even understand it was raining in your neighborhood.
Mm,
I didn't even understand that you're dealing with a flood and I'm trying to partner. Like, that EQ goes a long way and it's only strengthened by some tech help for sure.
absolutely. Yeah. Or even as you think about, natural disasters or things like
Exactly. Yeah,
bridge collapses in places, and you're over here
absolutely.
talking about a report or something that's just not, like, dude, it's all hands on deck on the ground here. Like, and you're talking to me about some other stuff.
That's
So it's,
real.
it's
Yeah,
definitely important as you're building genuine partnerships with folks.
for sure.
So tell me, what's your favorite part of your role?
Oh, man. Look, I'm an optimist. So I'm a caveat this with that. Like, I'm going to find joy in anything, but I love the fact that it's not Groundhog Day. You know what I mean? Like, it's never the same. There is no, it's Monday. Sit here, do these 10 things. Now Monday's over, right? It's not like that. You have to be disciplined. You have to be curious because it's easy to be quiet. It's easy to turn the computer down. It's easy to act like you ain't got nothing to do. No one's calling. So why I got to, it's hard to create energy. And I think in my role, the hard thing is you got to create it. People aren't just beating down your door. We're not like a name brand like an Uber. Like, oh, I need a car, call an Uber. I need a car, get a lift, right? We don't got that kind of market kind of like establishment yet, right? So because of that, we got to make some noise to get people to pay attention. And what does that come with? It comes with getting up early. It comes with like the alerts. It comes with tracking things down. It comes with some discipline. So what do I love about it? I love about it that you always got to bet on yourself. And not like yourself as in your own person, but like your team, like your squad. You like, yo, it's on us, y'all. We got to do it. Ain't nobody going to do it for us. And so I kind of ties back to old school, like when I was a high school basketball coach, like how do you get people fired up to get ready to go play Crenshaw? How do you get fired? Well, you got to get their mind right. And for me, mindset is everything. 100% of everything is mindset. Do you have the right mindset to go at this? And for me, what's exciting about this work is I get to talk to cats that are doing philanthropic giving, world changing nonprofit work, really awesome impact investing stuff that I hadn't even heard about. That can be before 9 a.m.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, so like I'm always what I call in the show. There's always something rad happening. You know what I mean? You're like, yo, did you hear what these dudes are doing? You hear what these ladies are doing? Like, and as a person that's already an optimist, you give me that kind of fuel, yo, I'm going through life blazing. And usually that's a good thing because my goal is to try to help the next person up, right? Part of being on this
Mm,
call today is about that is the next cat up. How can we help the next cat up understand what are some breadcrumbs, cheat codes? What are some things that can get you success? These are how I got there. These are some examples. But that the most exciting thing is it's never the same as it was yesterday. And
mm.
that to me is exciting because I'm adaptable. I'm curious. And if you're adaptable and curious and pretty driven, well, then it's always a new day. And now you got a
Absolutely.
shot again tomorrow. You know what I mean? So that's some of the stuff that really geeks me out.
That's great. I love that. And I think that also goes back to this piece, which is, let's tell the world how we met. How did you and I
Oh, for
connect?
sure. Absolutely. Well, I'll speak his name directly. His brother, Stephen Casey, a gentleman that I had met years ago through a virtual, it was a philanthropic association was putting together some speakers and Stephen was involved and I had been thirsting for brothers in philanthropy. I'm like, where are the brothers in philanthropy? Like I'm in all these meetings. I don't see anybody. Now, this was during the pandemic. A lot of it was virtual, so I understood it was a little bit muted. But when I saw him on this call, I said, yo, man, I just wrote him a direct Slack. I'm like, yo, you're a brother in philanthropy. Where are the rest of us?
Mm,
And he said, man, we got to meet. And then we set up a call a couple of days later. And he said, I'm trying to pull together a group of brothers in philanthropy, get cats that are trying to have kind of a resource group and build up. Would you be a part of it? I said, heck yeah. And then that led to a couple kind of early get together social conversations where like 60, 70 of us jump on a call, and you were on that call. And one of the things that I do whenever I'm on those big group calls is I'll screenshot that Brady Bunch image of all the Zooms, because I want to follow up. For me, relationships are my currency. I believe in that. Like the actual person. I don't want to ever be gate kept away from people, ever. And I will never gatekeep someone away from relationships I have. So when I did that screen grab, I started looking at, after the meeting, I started looking at where all these people spent time. And yours saw Career Cheat Code pop up. And I'm like, yo, this is it. This is what I care about. I'm the board chair of Mentor California. I mean,
Mm.
mentorship to me is a big deal. Mentorship and mindset. You put those two things together, you got something. I looked on your site and I saw some of the stuff you're talking about. I'm like, yo, I need to find out more about what he's doing. And then the next time we jump on a call, I wrote to you and I said, yo, man, I'm still geeked on what you're up to. I would love to learn more, just if I could support, if I could help. And then got to rapping, and now we're here.
I love that. No, I think that's absolutely right. And, I definitely appreciate you and the group for pulling that together, right? That group of just having just men of color that just are in this really not traditionally colorful space.
Sure.
So,
Facts.
and we're just there. And a lot of times it's just us being in the same room together or
Yeah.
virtually, right? Talking about what's going on, learning from each other. Sometimes we have a thematic approach to what's going on,
Sure.
but a lot of times it's just being in community with each other. And as you said, just following up with folks and then being able to say, okay, I know someone at this place, I know someone at that place. So if you have a question of how are folks approaching this, how are different organizations doing things, so you can actually find your tribe and really connect with that. So I really, I'm definitely very fortunate to be invited into that group and just appreciate all of the great folks that have come out of that. So I just appreciated that because I wanted to mention that here. I wanted people
Sure.
to know that if you don't see the spaces that you want to see in your field, you can create them. And that's what you guys have done. And you guys have put just whatever that affinity is to you all, do it, create the space. If you have, and like we're
Absolutely.
doing it in different ways. We're doing it here with this podcast. You're doing it
Sure.
there with Brothers in Philanthropy. You're doing it with folks that have bereavement issues. Whatever the thing is for you, do the thing. So I just wanted to
Yeah.
like state that so people can feel encouraged for that.
Absolutely. And it's like, look, you, I don't know how to say this thoughtfully, but if it ain't there, go make it. Right? Or stop complaining about the fact that it's not there. So, like for me, I think at this stage of life, I'm now 45. The younger version of me would have made noise and been like, "Why is this not? Why is it? I made some noise, make some noise." Well, then I get a little older, and you realize, well, I can make some noise and try to find the solution. And it doesn't have to be you. I think a lot of people think you got to be the solution. Like, no. Sometimes you just got to call attention to the issue, right? So I didn't have to create a network of brothers in philanthropy. I had to be interested in, does this exist? And by saying it in the space. Now the lift for me was to use some social capital I had because they'd asked me in this room to be a speaker, to then say, where are the men of color in this space? Some people would have said, you said that on a call? You didn't even know those folks? And I respectfully said, hell yes, I said that, because that was in my soul. That was in my heart. If I'm going to be candidly a speaker, then I can't candidly get the mic and not candidly use the opportunity to candidly get what I want, which was, where are we? And then that led to a snowball. And so I think sometimes people think you got to have it all figured out. You got to start the venture. You got to build it. You got to execute it. You got to fund it. No, sometimes it's just a matter of you got to identify it, or you got to tell somebody else, find somebody that's already doing it and get behind them, wind and sail. And so that, to me, is so many parallels between philanthropy and kind of this example we're talking about, which is everybody will spin up a new fund. There's a million funds doing things. Sometimes it's a matter about pulling them together and actually doing this instead of having a whole bunch of little things happening, right? And so I think I'm just come from an under-resourced background as an educator. And when I mean that, meaning like I went to school as a department chair and was given like one dry erase marker for the year and told to go change kids' lives. That under-resourcing, not the humans, right?
That's fair.
And so because of that, I learned to be like, all right, you give me one pen, watch me get down with this one pen.
That's fair. I love
You know what I
that.
mean? And like to me, that energy is what I try to push into. And that's why that collective was so powerful, because that's kind of what you hear. You hear other cats saying, this is how I'm doing it. Can I share some information with you? Oh, check out this book, check out this resource. because that's what helps us galvanize more of our own behaviors and get that professional patina to go and like go wherever it is that we want to go. And I think that's kind of some of the cool things about finding your tribe, to what you said earlier.
Certainly, and I also appreciate that it's a wide range and mix of
For
folks,
sure.
right? So it's
For sure.
folks that are just getting into philanthropy or just getting
Yeah.
into this space, folks that have been here for decades, right? And like you and everything in between, so you can really learn from each other.
Sure.
Back to your role. So you told me what the parts are that you love. What's the most challenging part of your role?
It's a good point. I mean, urgency. It's balancing the urgency, right? Like I want to run, but some of our partners are just now starting to put their feet in this idea of like trust or collaboration, right? Versus perpetuating some systems that they know and that they're kind of in. And so an example would be, we talk about reimagining reporting, using reporting in a different way, right? Not using it to like check the box on compliance, but actually to inform learning along the way. Well, some folks on the funding side will say, I like that, right? But then they'll say, but my board not necessarily like that, right? And so you have to like marry the excitement of, oh, you're interested, great, and you also have this system of kind of historical behaviors, good or bad, no indictment, just the reality. And so sometimes you gotta kind of be urgent, but still be very patient and disciplined to follow up, because very rarely is it no. Usually it's not yet. Usually it's like, yo, I like this, I'm interested, but switching the way we do things is not as easy as just me. It's my whole team, and it's like so that part is a little bit of I'd say, not that I don't like it, but it's a little bit of a pebble in the shoe, right?
Mm,
Because you wish everybody had the ability to run to the things that they want to run to. And I'd also say, just keep it a buck. I mean, you're dealing with philanthropy money, man. Like I, I have to decide how I want to use my social capital, and I've acquired a lot of it
mm,
respectfully, and I'm proud of it. Do I yield it to help bridge the gap between disparate groups of people that have been stepped on by some of the groups that have earned the money?
mm.
like like do I use it
That's good.
to help teach the funding group how more humanely to partner with people that look like me in communities that they've never been to
Mm,
besides a transaction? Do I So some of it is I go on a lot of walks by myself after meetings where I'm like, okay, where am I at with this? What I won't do is mental gymnastics. I will never do some mental gymnastics and fall into some strategic principled issues just to get a transaction, right? That
mm,
ain't me. And that ain't, I'm a man of principle. That ain't ever gonna, you're never gonna move me with another contract to do something that I would not have done without the contract. Just
that's
not gonna happen, right? And so that's some of the struggle is like, where's the line for me?
mm,
And that's on me, have to decide what that looks like. But it's a good struggle. You know what I
mm.
mean? It's a good struggle. It's one of those struggles that kind of by yourself with the pen, your journal, however you do it. These are the kind of conversations that you need to have sometimes with yourself. And where are you at? Where do you align? What do you stand for? What don't you stand for? And I think that although it's a struggle at times because of the work with philanthropic dollars, it is a beautiful place to be to try to figure that out.
That makes a lot of sense. And just to make sure we're all kind of on the same page, you said you were the first hire there. How big is your
Yeah.
team now? How big are you all now?
We are 40, a little bit fluid, about 43 of us. I
Wow.
think it's 43 or 42 of us, give or take. I know we're doing a little bit of hiring right now, so forgive me. I don't want to leave someone out, but we're in that space. Yeah, man. I came on board to help see if there was a there here with this with our CEO, and back in 2000, my first day was September 1st, 2015. And so early versions of what we were trying to build, and we knew we were building towards a bigger picture on using data to tell stories, but we took a couple pivots along the way, but have always stayed true to this idea about how do we help get capital to communities quicker.
Mhm.
And sometimes we think it's through data and information and relationships. And so we've stayed true to that core.
All right, so let's go back. What were you doing before this? Like, what your life look like? Were you always in this technology space, working with
Lord no,
with
Lord no.
organizations?
Yeah, no, no, no. I'm a high school PE teacher, basketball coach by trade. So like shouts out to Locke High School, Locke Saints in South Los Angeles, California. Yeah, I was an educator, man. That's what I was. I was a kines guy and PE guy. assistant principal, and then eventually I was the AD and ran after school and athletics for the whole school district, and just believed in educational based athletics and ownership activities, and like how can you use education to inspire. That was always kind of what I was into, and I was an adjunct professor at LMU for a while and teaching urban or secondary physical education in the urban classroom setting, and so doing some really cool things, but I took an $8 million loss when I was running after school programs for a charter school district in Los Angeles, Green Dot Public Schools. And I was a department of one, and I took an $8 million loss. And that was going to basically eradicate all the funding for after school funds for a lot of our 24 schools at the time. And I lost out because I lacked an effective data strategy to articulate the outcomes I aspired to have, is what was essentially imprinted on me from the state of California. The reality was there was a market crash after '08. A lot of that money that was funding these 21st century programs got crushed. Thus, what it was $118 million available went down to 18 across the state of California, and then everybody had to compete. And what I learned really quickly was, damn, if you don't have a bunch of grant writers, it's tough to compete, right? If you're in this real game. And so I had to go face a lot of families and talk to them about why I can no longer pay for historical Black college trips. I can't pay for driver's ed. I can't pay for robotics. All these things that a lot of schools across the country take for granted, I could no longer underwrite them. And when I tell you I was respectfully cussed out for about 4 straight months by every parent that came to the meetings across the city of Los Angeles. And the reality is, I was let to do that by myself. And it was the best development opportunity I ever got. There was zero, and I mean zero support to go into those parent meetings and get yelled at. Zero. And boy, did I take them. And I just took them all on the chin. Why, and having to explain and had to get my talking points correct, had to understand the funding cycle. What was my plan to get the money back? How am I going to go backfill this? Man, I became such a great development officer. I was going to LAPD and getting bread. I was going to all these after school providers, having them backfill, pay us, like just crazy amounts of partnerships to try to make it happen for kids. And what I learned quickly was the most important thing you can do is tell people what time it is, show them what you're trying to do, be accountable, and be consistent. If you do that, it'll start to grow back up, which it did. But by the time it grew back up, I was ready. I was tired and wanted to pass it on and go kind of teach other people how to do this. And when I saw that the data and information was the route, teamed up with our CEO who had an idea that was like, hey, man, how can we use information and data to kind of help basically stop buying more soccer helmets or soccer goals? It's like, what else can we do? So we teamed up, and now a bunch of really rad humans behind us and around us and ahead of us, and that really understand this from like the technical side to help build UpMetrics.
That's great. So can you also tell me, how did you transition from PE to then
Sure.
being responsible for these budgets and these programs
Sure.
and all the things? How do you grow like that? And then a little
Sure.
bit more about that moment when you're like, man, this is tiring, exhausting. Maybe I'm ready to move out of the school district altogether.
So I would say the first part is, look, man, I was a school president at my school. I was the middle school president, the sixth grade president. Like I always ran for student office. I was a captain of teams. Like I always knew where I came from. Spanaway, Washington, kind of a gritty little spot in the Pacific Northwest. Not a lot of fancy up there. But if you wanted something, you had to go, recycle cans. You had to go, man, I used to hop gates and like golf courses and take balls out of the lake and wash them and sell them back at the parking lot to the guys with the nice cars. Like I was a hustler when it came to like, you need a little money in your pocket to do things. So I've always taken that same concept of teaching. Like I'm never going to be told as a teacher, I can't do something with my kids because we can't afford it. Go fundraise for it. Go get a partner to get it. Make it. If you want it, you'll make it happen. And so as a teacher, I was a 22-year-old teacher at Locke, and I was able to kind of establish that pedigree pretty early, which is I was the girls varsity basketball coach and I was a softball coach. We had no budgets. Well, that's no excuse. Let's get this candy. Let's get these T-shirts. Let's do this car washes. Start making things look nice. And once you can identify, you can make things look nice, people are like, how'd you do that? I did it like this. Let's do it with this. So eventually I climbed up to be the athletic director, then the school I always knew a way to kind of navigate to help, because I've always wanted to help. You know what I mean? I've never wanted to be the man. I've always wanted to help. Now that puts you in a position of oftentimes being seen as quote unquote the man or the guy in charge or the person in charge. But that was never my impetus. My impetus was help. And so that became the way that I kind of built up my reputation. And if you needed something done in sport-based youth development and education in Los Angeles between 2002 and probably 2016, you're probably going to either see me, drop me a line, or I'm going to be in the meeting with you because I had got that reputation.
Mm,
And so it was great, but the way to the point of understanding the budgets and all that stuff was I listened and I hung around the meetings. I didn't go to the meeting just to get the bagel and dip. Like I
mm,
wanted the knowledge. Like I'm not going to sit up here and listen to too many people tell me it's this when it's actually that. Like I'm just not that guy. My dad and mom taught me better than that. And so, but I know how to disagree respectfully, right? Like, and I think some people know how to pound the table and make noise, and some people know how to disrespectfully move through their day, and other of us understand how to make the case, make the argument, be respectful, and move on the issue. And I think
mm,
that's what I always cared about. So for me, I pivoted into it because they knew I could handle money. Once you can show you can handle money, then you get a chance to handle more money. So then my budget, my after school budget just kept growing because I was able to backfill, fundraise, write grants. Once you learn the machine, you don't need too many people to tell you much more, right?
mm,
And it's just a matter of can you teach the next person what they need to know so they can be a part of it. I never want to gatekeep. I give you all the secrets. Is kind of the way I've approached it. But to your last part of your question of how did I pivot from PE to this, or excuse me, PE to leaving education, it's heartbreak. I very candidly, we were getting ready to have our second kid, and I was Department of One, and my wife runs schools, and so I knew we needed help. And I reached out to my leaders at my organization. I said, I need help this summer, and they said, okay, let's see what we can do. And mind you, I was an $8 million budget. I was like, I have this guy that I've met. He's willing to stick around for 2 more months this summer and help. I need to pay his rent. It's $5,000. Can we do that? Yeah, we can do that. On a Friday, we could do that. Come back on Monday. They told me we don't have that. And I said, we are a $100 million enterprise and we don't have $5,000 to pay this young man to stay on board so that I can actually take a PTO with my kid. The
mm,
rose colored glasses came off that day. Wrap. And I'm a loyal cat. They came off that day. That day, I was starting to listen to other opportunities. And I had a bunch, but I was loyal. I wanted to be with the kids. But that's the day that I realized that I was more of a piece of a machine as opposed to an asset. And then a couple months later, my CEO, Drew, and I started meeting. Ideas came up. And just like you and I got to rapping, this is what happened. That's kind of how we got after it. So the pivot was because I felt like I was no longer respected as an asset in that organization. And if I'm going to respect myself, then I need to find another way to do this. And there's no beef. I love the folks. They do great work. It's just priorities weren't where I thought they should have been relative to what I was doing. And so I can either complain, solve it, or dip. And I found a better opportunity. And that was 10 years and some change ago.
That's great. I love when people just own their careers and manage
Yeah.
their lives accordingly. I think you can certainly outgrow places. You can certainly get to a point where, the mutual benefits of the relationship are just not there and you can just part ways and it's fine. As you said, it doesn't have to be beef, right? Like,
No.
I've left roles in the past and I love those people and we're in great spaces and like, we have drinks and meetups and all things like
Yeah.
the people and the beautiful relationships remain, but the employment doesn't have to. So you can always take some of that with you and then, continue to grow elsewhere where you feel
Absolutely.
like you are being met in the ways that you want to. So I appreciate you sharing that because I recognize that there are people out there that may be in similar circumstances and just don't, may not know that
Yeah.
that they can do that or that
Well,
they should do that.
absolutely. And it's hard. That's why mentorship matters, right? Because it's hard to like take a step outside of it was a school district job. I could have settled in, you know what I mean? Like I could tell you exactly what I'd be making today, 10 years ago, you know what I mean? Like you knew it was comfortable, you knew the benefit package, you kind of knew job security, but like if that's what you want, then great. But that's not going to make me happy on its own. I need to also make sure that I'm stimulating the things that I care about, which is curiosity and learning and solving and once you realize that those things aren't going to be available to you, what happens to me, or in my opinion, is sometimes people start to calcify. They start to turn into kind of like the hard version of themselves so they can survive the work they're doing. And then
Mm,
the worst of them shows up every day, right? And I don't mean that like bad people. I mean like the worst like assets of them. And I'm a leader. I'm a charismatic leader. I bring charisma to the party, sweat equity before I get there, and we getting after it. We're going to have some fun. We're going to knuckle it out and we're going to dip. We're going to try to change the world in the middle of that.
Mm.
That's what we do, right? But if I get to a point where I'm showing up and I'm like, hey, man, what up? You know, I'm good. Yo, you know what I mean? Like now the strengths that I have are being muted. So you're getting a diluted version of me in a position that you don't need that. I'm not going to change. And then we just start to wonder why, man, it's Tuesday. It's Monday. Can't do it. Right. So like, but the mentor side of it helps you kind of unlock some of that of like, yo, man, sometimes you change your shoes, your feet feel different,
Mm.
you know, and sometimes it's easy as that. Other times it's, nah, man, it's time for you. You got that mortgage. You better stay because you got to make these decisions based on tomorrow, not 10 years from now. Like, and being able to help youngsters understand that, or not even necessarily youngsters, but like people in that position that need a little bit of that guidance. I had a couple cats like that in my life that really helped me stay grounded and stay kind of focused on the prize. That helped me navigate some of these things.
That's fair. I appreciate that. So let's actually go a little further back. I know you mentioned
Sure.
growing up in Washington. Can you
Ooh,
talk a little bit about your upbringing? Where were you born, raised?
sure.
What was that like? And then what did you want to be when
Ooh,
you
sure.
were, call it
Sure.
12, 13 years old?
I was born in Las Vegas. I'm a military kid, so I'm the baby child of two Air Force folks. So, but they were done kind of moving around the country mostly when I was born. So, born in Las Vegas, raised briefly in Arizona, Luke Air Force Base, outside of there, and then my family settled in Spanaway, Washington. Back in the time, the '70s, you could be a biracial couple and be up in the Northwest, and they kind of leave you alone a little bit. Is what my dad said. Raised in Spanaway, tough part of South Puget Sound. Seattle, Tacoma, right below Tacoma. So it's about 30 miles south of Seattle. You know, everybody grows up playing football, wrestling, baseball, basketball, fishing. You know what I mean? If you had money, you went skiing or up in the mountains, but wasn't really a reality for us. So we threw snowballs, but it was a great place to grow up because it was tough. Tough, not like tough, like violence, tough, like dilapidated fences and housing. You know, it just wasn't a lot of frosting in my neighborhood, put it that way, but a lot of pride. You know what I'm saying? A lot of pride, specifically school athletics. And I just loved it. But I have a unique kind of upbringing in the fact that my dad died of a very, very rare disease when I was in seventh grade, so 92. I'm 45 now, but he died of something called disseminated coccidioid mycosis. It's a fungal infection, often referred to as San Joaquin Valley fever. There's two versions, one disseminated, one non-disseminated, kind of takes on like a mononucleosis, like immunodeficient, or kind of depresses the immune system. But after about 6, 7 months, you bounce back. The other one kills you. And so my dad raised me with, young man, his name was Stephen. He said, little Stevie, I'm dying. So you got to know how to do X, Y, and Z. I'm dying. So you got to do, that's just how he talked to me. There was no balloon animals. There was no like, it was all love, but it was like, yo, man, I'm dying. So you need to know these things. And he caught it in '79 when I was born, and he died in '92 when I was in seventh grade. So all the data I know on little brown boys whose dads are missing, I'm the opposite of all of those data points, right? Because that dude poured into me something vicious, and my mom as well, brother and sister as well. But like how to show up, how to shake hands, how to be respectful, how to bust your ass every day, how to really focus, work, love. My dad cut flowers. My dad sculpted ice. My dad was a chef. Just like, yo, figure it out, man. Find a way to bring joy into this world and do it with some focus and some discipline. And so that's kind of really what's always poured into me. A lot of the reason I went and became a teacher was because people would say things like, little boys like you with no dad don't. And I'm like, yo, man, like what? I don't even understand what you're saying. And so I wanted to go be that young black teacher that you can look at and be like, yo, that dude knows what I want to look like. I want to walk around like Minix. I want to be like that dude. Or I trust him. I like him. I listen to him because I knew what it was like to have that kind of love. And like, I had a buff Southern black military dad who just like gave kisses and hugs. You know what I mean? Like, I'm getting chills even saying it. Like, it was just unbelievable in like what it's like to be, in my opinion, a man, like a loving, all supportive, caring, selfless man. And when you can do that with a partner and you see what that does for a family. We had our own little stuff that we were dealing with and figuring out, but like, it was always warm, was always fed, was always loved, right? And like that was regardless of salaries. And so when you go get your little college degree and think you're going to change the world, well, the foundation that I have is, are we fed? Are we taken care of? Are we loved? Do my kids feel like they can run through brick walls if they want to? Those little things. And so I got that from my dad and my mom as well, of course. But my dad really poured that into me. And I just think that if you have that kind of foundation, even if it's only for a year in your life, it's foundation. It really helps you stay focused. And so when I'm in conversations with people and I'm hearing things about what can be, what can't be, I always fall back to my ideas of like, I've seen it. I've seen the model. I know what it's like to walk with your head up and your shoulders back, look everybody in the eye, shake hands, be respectful, show up tomorrow and do it again, serve. It was modeled. And so it's not as hard to be successful in this world when you have a model for what success can be. And I think
Mm,
that's important.
that's fair. I appreciate you sharing that. That's a really,
Yeah.
that's a real story, right? And it's one of those things that like are just formative and just shape your
So,
outlook on life. But I do really appreciate that even at a young age, it sounds like you recognize that he was pouring so much into you, and now you're able to carry that forward, right? So I just, I think
oh man,
your perspective on such a circumstance is just remarkable and speaks a lot about you.
I appreciate it, man. But it's also one of those things like if it helped you, why don't you gonna keep it to yourself?
Mm,
Like I'm just not one of those like that's what I tell even my partners. I say like if you got something that you figured out, how can we learn in public so others can benefit? Like to me, the biggest injustice this world is experienced, in my opinion, is Stephen Minix, my dad, passing away too early before he got a chance to cook the rest of his life. Like he did
mm,
do the things because he was just so solid. So what can I take from him and share? Well, it's in these moments. I can share, I can give somebody a little bit of a nugget about what I experienced and how I turned pain to progress. That's the through line of my life, pain to progress, right?
mm.
Lost $8 million, found out a way to kind of pivot into tech, focused on data so other people don't have to have that same problem. Dad passed away early, used that to inform kind of basically creating my own internal career coach, life coach out of my dad's memory, right? Like that I use to kind of look in the mirror and hold myself accountable for. And so it's pain to progress. I think it's important.
Yeah. So, as someone that is involved in mentorship
Yeah.
and that very much believes in this, what are some pieces of information you wish you knew a little earlier in your career? Like just
Ooh.
some of those like career cheat codes that have
Yeah.
just helped you along the way.
Oh, yeah. Relationships are your currency. That's got to be the number one. I said it earlier. Relationships are your currency. You need to understand people stop at networking. Networking is transactional, right? Relationship cultivation is not. Relationship and network go together. But if you
Hmm.
stop just at the business card transaction or the op transaction, then you're missing out. The relationship piece, if you put networking and relationship cultivation together, you will be endlessly relevant. You can make a phone call and get an answer. You can make a phone call and get an introduction. You can take a phone call and provide a reference. You start to understand your relevance in being a support. So to the extent that you can get beyond just networking, go to the sessions. Don't meet 100 people, meet 10, right? Don't get watered down, get depth. So those kind of things are important. So to me, that's one. Another one is take notes, copious notes. Take copious notes, contemporaneous notes, copious notes. You should always have a Google Doc open on on your computer that just says like the date of that week. Yo, what do you got? You got some wax? Write it, write it, write it. Just even if it's like one or two things, you can do them with voice notes now if you want. But if you're not using the tech to help you, or, I mean, you can do it old school. You can do it pen and paper. I keep one next to me. I always write down some notes, some stuff I come back to. But a lot of us, and I'll speak specifically to men, we forget that like we got to talk to somebody. Sometimes if you don't have somebody to talk to, you can talk to your journal, you can
Mm,
write, right? So if you don't have the money for the therapist, or if your ego won't let you get a therapist, or if you're whatever, you always can write. You can always put a couple things down on paper. Those things are powerful because even if you don't go back to seeing them again, getting them out sometimes catharsis. That act of like getting it out. The next one I'd say is get really good at sending yourself email. Right? You write something, send that to yourself, and step away from it for 30 minutes. Come back. It'll help you with your tone. I think some of us, specifically, I speak for me, men of color, we get a little hot. We get a little pissed off. We want to write some stuff. We want to go a little bit. Your head starts bobbing. Well, before you press send externally, sometimes you want to make sure it's what you want. I'm not talking about code switching. I'm not talking about muting yourself. I'm talking about measure twice, cut once. If you're going to say something, you're going to put it in email or you're going to write something, make sure it's what you want, especially if it's a sticky topic or it's a little bit kind of like heated. Send that email to yourself. It gets you that same exact exercise of writing it, catharsis of sending it, and it comes back to you. When you read it, I guarantee you'll be like, ooh, yikes. Okay, hold on. Let me change that. That's spelled wrong. That's this. And then if you want to write it again and send it out. But that kind of stuff, because we usually don't get the benefit of the doubt. We usually get, oh, y'all angry, right? Now you're playing with headwind. Now I got to prove to you I'm not angry. Over time, I ain't got time for that. Send an email, mute yourself. Check yourself that way. And I'd also say take the parent teacher approach. Reach out to people when nothing's going wrong or you don't need something. Don't only reach out to them when your kid got in trouble or like it's just I see it done wrong all the time. I see it done wrong in parent teacher conferences. Yo, man, drop me a text on that parent app that says my kid was funny, right? More than you drop me off and say, or drop me the note that says, my kid has a discipline issue, come in. Like, if you only go to people when you need something, then you are needy. And that's not a way to create a relationship. So those are some of the ones I would say, and all those can be done with no money right now.
I appreciate that. And I definitely relate to that. I tell a lot of the folks, I also coach grad students now and alumni and on a formal way. And then, of course, other things. But one of the things I tell people is that, like, don't be the person that only reaches out when you need something, because if every time I see your name, you need something, that doesn't create a real relationship. Like, I need to be able to just send me a note, say, hey, by the way, I got a new job. Just good to like talk to you and just connect. That's it. All right, cool. Update. But like, if every time I connect with you is like you need something like that, it's disingenuous.
Well, it's kind of like it's kind of like I'm sure in your life, just like in mine, the last couple of days, a whole bunch of text messages coming in on Thanksgiving from people you haven't heard from in a long time. Yo, man, happy Thanksgiving, man. Thinking about you.
Yeah.
Imagine if people took that same level of thoughtfulness 6 weeks before Thanksgiving and said, yo, man, hey, just thinking about you, dude. Hope things well. Same message, but
Absolutely.
you don't need the holiday to be the prompt. Imagine how proactive people start looking at each other like, yo, man, I appreciate you. Last year I started that. If I think of you in a moment, if something comes up, I think of you, it's on me to send you a note right then. And I'll say it. Like, yo, man, I was just listening to this new Nas album, blah, 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 blah. Remember when we were in college, blah, blah, blah. Done.
Yeah.
And what has happened is created some crazy cool conversations with some cats that I haven't talked to in a minute, right? And it's not fake. It's just simple, but it's just one of those examples of like the power of proactive communication, and it feels good too. You know, it's
Absolutely.
good.
So in this field, I'm a big proponent that you can do good and do well.
Absolutely.
Can you give folks an understanding of how much money people can make in this type of field?
Sure. Well, it depends on, we're in tech, right? So like there's engineers that are making very, very good money coding, writing code and doing that. And, you're talking about, six figures, 175, some of the starting rates of some of these engineers coming in. On the external side, most folks are on the six figure side of things plus commission. So it just depends if you're selling product versus if you're tending to it. All of our staff members, all the people that come into our company get equity stake. So you get equity piece of the company, which is because what we want to do is have people actually working with something they believe in. And it's all disclosed on our website. So if you go to the careers page on our website, it shows you exactly what the benefits package is, the equity package is. A lot of folks will come in, they'll ask during the hiring process, like, what's equity, right? And it's just because not a lot of people have been taught that. Not education, ain't a lot of nonprofit education folks having equity conversations in their social enterprise. You know what I mean? So like, that's a cool thing, but it can kind of, you could plan on starting around those kind of $100,000 range and then starting to climb up from there, depending on if you're on the commission side of things or the engineering side of things change a lot. But yeah, folks can make their bread for sure.
I love that. Are there any forms of media, so books, podcasts, things that you have consumed that have shaped you personally or professionally? Doesn't have to be professionally.
Sure. I would say there's a book called The Four Agreements. I would encourage anybody to read. Just
Mm.
just read it. It's a Toltec like story about kind of the way to navigate life. Just powerful. I would suggest reading it. There's a book by John Gordon called The Energy Bus. That is he has about a series of about 4 or 5 books. One of them's The Energy Bus, one of them's The Soup. Those two specifically, you could probably read them in a long bus ride. I mean, they're very short, but they're metaphor based stories that help you quickly understand some pretty meaty business principles that I've found to be solid. And there's a podcast called Real History that I would highly recommend. I just think past is prologue, and I think far too often people are looking for new, funny, fancy, cool stuff. And I think sometimes revisiting kind of history, real dictators, it's real as the font, and they have like a thing on the back end that I would suggest just because it helps you think about leadership in a different way, and good and bad, and what can happen if you think of yourself as a leader. But I'd also say masterclass. Anybody that, if you want to invest in something, yo man, masterclass. If you're looking for some like real easy, kind of palatable, like I watched a dope masterclass a couple months ago on a woman that was a Peloton trainer, but I used it because what she was talking about was inspiration. I wasn't worried
Mm.
about the training of the bike. I was worried about how she inspired people to do things that they don't think they can do. And then the one with Ron Finley on gardening. I mean, there's just some really cool stuff that you can micro kind of consume that helps you stay focused. But those are some of the main ones that I'd say I dive into for sure.
That's awesome. Is there anything else we haven't discussed that the world should know about Stephen?
Yo, man, if you're not seeing me do this, I am behind a grill or I'm gardening. That's my. I think that you got to find something that brings you joy. Besides my 3 daughters and my wife, who are just all the things, the best, the great. Yeah, this is not about that. You got to find something that also brings you personal joy. And I think a lot of us forget that like personal joy is important. Being
Mm.
silly, play, goofing around, those things are important to adults too. And you just got to find a way that they're appropriate in your life, right? And for me, as soon as I get off a call like this, I go jump on my hill for a minute and toil in the dirt because it helps me think about what I just did. It helps me, but also it plays into my creativity side of like, I'm not an artist, but my landscaping on that hill where I got my broccoli, my cabbage, my artichokes, all that cracking, that had to get there somehow, right? So my creative brain was satiated there. So whatever it is that you're into that can, or that you want to be into, that can help keep those synapses firing, that joy firing, that fun, and it gives you a chance to mess up. You know
Mm.
what I mean? Like you have to have opportunities to swing and miss in your life. Because if you don't, you'll never take risks. So for me, I can't go into big enterprise deals swinging and missing too often. I can swing and miss on my plot of where my Brussels sprouts are at, right? But there's risks associated with both. But that same ability of like taking a stance, deciding why I'm going to do it, putting in the effort, having the patience, following up, maintaining all the way through cycle from seed to plate, that's discipline. Well, I can see the direct correlations back to that in building a team, building a company, right? And so my to your question about things about me you don't know, that's one of them. That's my secret weapon is I use gardening as my counselor, as my muse, as my like because it tells you if you mess up. You know what I mean? You do too much, it'll tell you. You don't do enough, it'll tell you. And so I think there's some feedback there that's important. So whatever it is for y'all, find your thing, but test your metal with it and use your discipline, your structure, your focus. Put it to something that's fun.
That's awesome. Thank you. Well, thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Indeed, man. Thanks for having me.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did and believe on the mission we're on, please like, rate, and subscribe to this podcast on whatever platform you're using, and share this podcast with your friends and your networks. Make sure you follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn at Career Cheat Code, and tell us people or careers you would like to see highlighted. See you next week with some more cheat codes. Peace.